Joby Hodling, joined by the mayor, Mr. John Henry, and we were talking there off air. So before we get back, I'm going to let you talk about it a little bit, John, because I know you're like me, you're a sports fan.
Absolutely.
The Artesia Bulldog football team, they looking pretty good.
They do, yeah. It's been, if you're an Artesia Bulldog fan, it's been a great year so far. So,
yeah, not undefeated. We went over to Hobbs and had that high-scoring affair and come up on the short end, but still a lot of excitement. And you were kind of like me. You were talking. You said during the Deming game, the homecoming game, if we get to 50, is it over at halftime? And I was pretty sure it was. Of course, Robbie and I were on there and we were talking about that, and it is a 50-point rule.
Right.
And I don't know how I feel about that. I've kind of bounced back and forth. What are your thoughts on the 50? Number one, let's talk about the 35-point running clock rule,
right,
and then the 50-point kill the game rule. What are your thoughts on those?
You know, the one thought I have, and that's what I was saying off air. I think the entire time I've lived here, they've only done that one other time that I can kind of remember. And because my daughter's a Bulldog football fan freak too. She loved to go to the games with me. And so at halftime it ended, and we were like, so it's over? And it's kind of a bummer because you still have the band, you still have a lot of stuff, but people started leaving. And so I don't know that I love it ending at halftime, because there's a lot of neat halftime activities that we should watch and enjoy. And those kids worked really hard for those performances. And so I'd like it to bump back. Plus, those, you know, even though you're behind, the boys deserve a chance to go out there and give it a shot. Was a pretty tough shot though at the first half, so I don't know, maybe.
Well, I tend to agree with that. I'm of the opinion that that these rules are part of the softening of America.
Yeah.
I will say this: people did start leaving at the game halftime, but really the crowd, for the most part, stayed intact, and it was a big crowd.
Yeah.
For Artesia, well, we have big crowds every game, of course, but Deming only brought a few. They might have had 50 or 75 or so. It seemed like, as I looked across the field to the stands over there, but the visitor side was almost full by the time the game was going. Flood of orange, and of course our side was full.
Yeah.
So that's a big crowd. It was homecoming, so that's to be expected, I guess. But that was a great crowd. But back to these 35-point run. When you get up by 34-5, the clock runs, and then the 50-point game ends. I don't like, for sure, the 50-point game end rule. I'm on the fence, I guess, a little bit about the 35-point game where the clock just runs, except for on a change of possession. That rule, I guess, just from a personal standpoint, I guess I could say I could live with it. I don't like the 50-point run rule, partially for what you said and for a lot of other reasons. Big thing to me is that other team can still get their full game in, and what it allows the team that's up by 50, in this case it was us, to do is let every player play.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, when I was playing in high school, we didn't have the mercy rule.
Right, exactly.
And so I was fortunate enough to be on some decent teams, and it was great because then, you know, those second, third string kids get a lot of play time, get a lot of experience, and that's a lot of fun for them too. And so I get it. You know, it's tough on the other team, but when you get those other groups in there, it helps them get better. I mean, even if they're down by 50, you can still get better. Every play you play, in my opinion, now this is just me as a dad, not a coach. Maybe coaches disagree, but every play you play, you're going to get better. You're going to learn something about your team, and I don't know. I like those kids to be out there learning, and if you get beat, you're going to get beat in life too, and figure out how to handle it properly, and continue to fight, and not just have it end. So,
well, I know that I know. I think that part of the reasoning or part of the idea was that that there are coaches out there that won't play their backups, so they'll just run it up to 100 or something. But in my opinion, most coaches, probably 90% or more, would want their kids that aren't in varsity games a lot to get that playing time. So I'm not a proponent of it, but it happened, and it's happened.
Yeah.
The only other time I can remember it happening was, and I'm probably wrong on this, but my oldest son's senior year, they ended up beating a team that was Portales by 50, and it ended. So
that very well could have been the
but
game.
It wasn't here, so it was in Portales. So if it was a game here, so there's probably more than that. I just don't remember them all, but. But and like you said, when you and I played, I'm a little older than you, but you played not too long after I did. But those rules didn't exist. There wasn't any running clock.
No.
There wasn't any 50-point run rule, and so. But yeah, the Bulldog football team having a great season. Our volleyball team having a great season. Soccer
Absolutely.
teams are having great seasons.
Yeah.
It's great to be a Bulldog. I see that on a piece of paper over there, and that's what you
Yeah.
say when you go into the field house. It's great to be a Bulldog, and people say it all over town. That's exciting. Well, let's talk about our town. We were talking about
Yeah.
one of the things that you guys got accomplished last night. When you say you got it accomplished last night, I figure that means it was voted on by the council and passed, and that is
Right.
the ordinance, or I guess maybe an ordinance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's changing the ordinance.
That changed that allows people to break up their properties more than one time every 5 years.
Right. Yep. So that's the only change. Everything else we talked about still in the works, but last night was just correcting our ordinance to make it a little more land user friendly is what we were shooting for.
What else went on last night? You said it was I guess maybe it was a little longer than normal meeting?
Yeah, a little longer than normal. Lots and lots of business. Some of these things, one of the things that we've been talking about quite a bit is, we have a lot of events in town, and a lot of reoccurring events that happen every year. And the process now is if it's your event, you got to go to get all the approvals, then it's got to go to council. And, to me, I like everything streamlined the best we can. I mean, I guess that's business operators in general. I'm sure you're the same way. If we can streamline it, make a process easier, make it more user-friendly for the customer, which in this case is the citizens, do it. And so we're trying to streamline those events to where rather than all of them having to go to city council, if they're reoccurring, if they happen every year, department heads, as long as it's a unanimous sign-off on department heads, it can go. Because a lot of times what happens is, I forgot to get our event thing in place, and you miss the city council meeting, and so your event's within those 2 weeks, and it becomes a problem. So this makes it a little easier for folks to say, you know what, this happens every year, nothing changed, and as long as all the department heads, which when it comes to city council, it's the same process. All the department heads have unanimously signed off on it, and then we just say yes, for the most part. There's been very few, to my understanding, talking with the council where they've said no. So, if it is something new or if it's something now, if your event has liquor or there's other things, well, state statute makes that come to council. So there's really no changes there. It's for simple events that happen all the time. Streamline the process, make it easier for the user, so that we don't have these events where everybody's stressed out trying to figure out, it's this Saturday. Okay, well, now here's the process that we can get around it as long as it's an event that's happened before. So that's something we've been working hard on. It doesn't sound, again, it's one of those things that people are like, well, what does that matter? Well, I've already talked to 2 people that are really excited that have events on a regular basis. It makes it easier for them to get their things accomplished. So the end use is what the goal is. So
let me ask you this. So in the next hour, we're going to have folks here for the Yucca Blossom Trade Days.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an example of an event? It's out at the Eddy County Fairgrounds, so I don't know if the city is involved in that, but would that be an example?
that would be an example. That one's in the county, but yeah, that's an example. Lots of examples. There was a walk a couple weeks ago that happens every year. Red Dirt Black Gold isn't an example because it would have alcohol, so that would have to come no matter what. Gosh, now that you've asked me, I'm completely blanking on all the events we have.
Well, there's a lot of stuff.
Lots and lots of stuff that goes on. Lots of things that happen every year that aren't major events, and they just need to go quicker and make it easier for them. So.
Before you get into your next, because I do want you to be able to kind of wrap up whatever happened at the meeting last night, but you said it 2 or 3 times, so I'm going to ask because I don't know, and I'm curious.
Sure.
A lot of people may know the answer to this, but I don't. Department heads, how many are there?
Okay, so you got the clerk, public maintenance, so one, let's see, you got Summer, Byron, Jim, the 2 fire chiefs, 6, and HR, so 6.
So 6 public, and so those folks, each on anything that's going to go happen in the city of Artesia, they all have to look at it, review it,
Right.
say my department is involved in this way, and then say, okay, we're on board, and they check mark or whatever,
Yep.
and then it goes to the next department head. Is that the
Yeah, and so obviously police and fire are going to take a hard look at it if you're going to do anything with streets or any kind of movement, safety. So they're some big sign off. Byron's a big sign off because if we're having to shut down roads, it's his department, comes to roads. Jim would be a big sign off because he's going to deal with all the other rules that the city has. So, but police, fire, and Byron are really looking at safety, road. So the reason it goes through them all is because each department has a
Piece of the pie.
yeah, and a different look at the pie. And so we want to make sure it's vetted very, very carefully and make sure we're safe in all events. And that's my point. I don't want to cut back on safety. I want to cut back on why does it need to go to council? Because if y'all have already looked at it, y'all are the experts. You know, council members, we're not the experts. Y'all are. So if we're comfortable with it, then it should be good to go.
All right. Well, what else went on last night? I know you had a Boy Scout troop there, and you can talk about that. But what
Yeah.
else was city business last night?
City business, other things, that another one that some people aren't excited, but airport hangars, that's something we've been working on for a long time. Right now, you can, if there's land out there to lease to build hangars, but it's only 5 years with, I think, so you can extend it 2 times, so 15 years total. What we're trying to do is extend it to 20 years. Reason that's important is when somebody's going to go and invest and build a hangar, which we desperately need, the banks don't want a 5-year lease. They want to see that 20. So that would help develop out at the airport. You know, some people might not think that's a big deal, but there's a lot of folks in town that have planes. There's a lot of folks that, in fact, in my real job, or the job that pays me money, I don't know how to describe it. I've got a lot of real jobs, but the one that apparently pays my bills, I've sold folks houses in Roswell simply because they had a place for their plane. Instead of, they wanted to be here, but they had to have a place for the plane. We didn't have enough space for them. So that does have a big impact. Plus, it's a good thing to have here in town. Some extra space for that kind of stuff. So it doesn't affect anyone. It doesn't cost us anything. We also corrected the rates to make sure we're more competitive with everyone around us. It's not a big money windfall for us out there, but it does help generate the GRT, which is obviously a big goal.
So if someone builds a hangar, the city owns the land. The investor builds the hangar at their cost.
Right.
And then you set a lease. Who's leasing it? The city? Who's leasing that hangar?
They're leasing it.
They're leasing it.
Yeah.
Basically leasing the land that they built on. I'm sorry, I just
no. So yeah, they lease the land. So it's kind of like what we do in an industrial park. That piece of land is yours. Anything you put on top of it, and that was part of the discussion last night. So it's a good question to ask. Is in industrial park, you lease a blank piece of land. Whatever you put on that land becomes the city's once your lease is gone. So when you leave, everything you've built on there is now city. So if you built a shop or an office or whatever, that becomes city property. So that's the same thing we discussed last night. So once this 20-year lease is up, can they take their hangar with them, or does it have to stay? And so that was our, and we all, just like industrial park, well, it makes sense to say, well, no, you're leasing at such a low rate because your goal is to grow, right? The industrial park is to grow. Well, this would be to grow, so that would be your compensation for hopefully what you built on the property.
Okay. And so the owner of the airplane, they wanted to build that. They're leasing it back from the city, and their 20 years is up. Can they renew?
I'm sure there'll be a clause to renew, and I mean, we have no interest in taking them. We just we needed longer lease terms for those bankers to want to
loan the money to the builder.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another piece of what you guys discussed last night. Any other stuff that you went through?
Yeah, a lot of other stuff. Chamber, which I won't go too deep into theirs. Y'all hear from them all the time. They do a great job. They had a long piece of showing us kind of what they've done this last year. It's pretty amazing. Talking back on the housing, which sort of involves the chamber, they had an economic development young man this summer kind of interned with them, and he did a housing study for us. And it was fascinating, everything that he kind of found out. To our point earlier, he called a lot of companies to see how many folks live outside of town and would like to live in town. So we have some pretty good numbers. So they've been very, very helpful in getting that information out to us. So
they had a good report.
Great report. The other thing in our we have a lot of department or committee reports, and in our infrastructure committee, we did a lot of work, and we've been doing a lot of work. We put a lot of money this year. We gave $1 million to Parks and Recreation, trying to get some things going. A lot of the things that we're working on that should hopefully be coming. Obviously, we talked already about the trees, dead trees on the draw. They've been working on that. Some big exciting projects coming up is a dog park. That's been a huge topic for a lot of folks. Want a dog park? I totally agree with them. I think we need something. A lot of cities have. There's gas stations that have a little dog park. I mean, it's tiny, but dog parks are a big deal. We're working on right now at a JC Park. If you go look at those awnings, man, they were in really bad shape. They were rusty. They were kind of dangerous. We've already got a bunch of those taken care of. Folks, go take a look at that, because it's shocking when you look at one we've done, then go look at the one next to it that we hadn't got to yet. It's a dramatic difference. So getting all those shelters done for us. Lots of work out on the ballparks out there. We're looking at disc golf. We're working with a couple different groups to try to get disc golf here. The great thing about disc golf, in my opinion, is Carlsbad has, I don't know if you call them championship courses. They have accredited courses, whatever you want to call it. And Roswell does too. And they have a ton of tournaments. And so all the disc golf people that speak that language, which I don't, I've played it a few times and it seems fun, but I'm not in that league. And they said if we could get the same kind of caliber, which they're not that expensive, then all of a sudden you become part of the tournament plan, schedule, circuit. Yeah. And they're bringing in 100 people on a weekend. Well, that's rooms they might rent, that's food they might eat, that's GRT that we're creating that would pay for the park pretty rapidly. So we're really trying to focus on stuff that could maybe bring in tournaments. Pickleball courts. Again, that's another group that came and talked to us. They go to pickleball tournaments everywhere. So how do we start trying to bring some of that stuff here? So we worked real hard on the pickleballs. There's cornhole and horseshoe stuff going on. Just lots of court resurfacing. We're taking one basketball court out and going to replace it with a sand volleyball court, because there were 2 courts in this particular park. So that gives you different options on things to play. I'm pretty excited, and I know we're putting a lot of pressure on Byron and his team, because this all falls under his department. But he's doing an exceptional job in keeping up with it, keeping us on track. I keep saying we've got the foot on the gas and we don't want to let up, but we also have to understand we don't want to press too hard. I mean, obviously, most folks know we had that water break this weekend, affected the restrooms at the Bulldog Bowl, and what a terrible time. I mean, you got homecoming, you had so much stuff going on. What a terrible time, but unfortunately. So that pulls them off to take care of some of those things. We're mowing, we're doing all that other. So there's all the other stuff they have to handle, plus this on top of it. So
they're busy.
They're busy. Be patient with them, but we've got a lot of great stuff coming, and Artesians should be excited for what we got coming around the corner.
I know we got to wrap this hour up, John, and you've got plenty of work to do, but before I let you go, I do want to ask one thing on the selfish side. Mm-hmm. I've heard that there might be somewhere down the road, we might have a I don't know if it's going to be a pond or a lake maybe out at JC Park. Is that something that might possibly happen sometime in the future, or is that even in the planning stages at all?
We talked about it for a little bit, and then when numbers came in, they're pretty tough. Plus with the water usage and what the state's kind of demanding on water, it'll be an interesting discussion. It was discussed for a little while. It's kind of been put on the side for the second because of the numbers, but
okay.
But it is in the master plan. It is out there at JC Park. I mean, there is hope someday.
All right, well,
yeah.
I'll keep that hope alive in my own mind then.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Sorry I did
okay.
on that note, darn it.
That's all right. That's okay. Well, John, thank you for coming in this morning as always.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being patient with me, filling in for Gene, and I guess we'll see you around town.
Yeah.
I know you'll be back on the radio.
I'll be back. Thanks for doing it. I know what you got. It's a tough job, so thanks for filling in.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break. Stay tuned.